10 spine-chilling tales. A sinister knock at midnight revealed the cursed truth of an old friend. Molly's heart raced as the echo of the knock knocked into the stillness. It was a hollow, unsettling sound that reverberated through her dimly lit living room like a distant thunderstorm promising chaos. She gripped the edge of her couch, every hair on her body prickling as a wave of dread crashed down on her. The clock ticked ominously, each second blending into the hum of her thoughts. Who would come knocking at this hour? The evening routine had been peaceful. Her boys were nestled in their beds, the scent of lavender still hanging in the air, and now the calm was shattered. Her steps were cautious, each one heavy with the weight of dread as she made her way to the door. The shadows seemed to linger longer than usual, twisting and curling in the corners like phantoms. She placed her hand on the doorknob, palm sweaty, as the memory of childhood games flickered in her mind, games that she had played with someone long thought gone. The thought sent ice coursing through her veins. Gathering her courage, she swung the door open, and there stood Jake. It was him, but different. The vibrant boy she remembered was now obscured beneath an unsettling weight, his smile stretching too far, too hollow. A deep chill curled around her spine as their eyes met, flickering back to years filled with laughter and innocence. But wasn't he supposed to be dead? "Hey, Molly," he said, voice smooth yet jagged, like the edge of a broken glass. Fingers trembling, she invited him in, breaching her own carefully constructed sense of security. They sat in the dim glow of her lamp, an awkward silence following the forced small talk, and a feeling of something impending hung thick in the air. Just as she offered him coffee hastily brewed, just to fill the silence, a louder knock interrupted her thoughts. This sound was different, urgent, like a warning drum echoing through the house. Molly opened the door again, eyes wide, heart pounding. What she found made her stomach drop. Strange symbols marred the wood. Panic surged in her chest. What was happening? She turned back to Jake, but his gaze was fixated on the door, his smile evaporating as fear flickered across his face. "You shouldn't have opened it," he whispered, voice dropped to a conspiratorial hush. She drew back, gripping the edge of the table, the solidity of it grounding her as memories crashed through her mind. The stories of rituals in the woods, the darkness that was whispered about after the sun sank below the horizon, returned like an unwelcome guest. Neighborhood secrets twisted in her brain, shadows of what might lurk behind every corner. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's eyes bore into her, losing their boyish gleam, revealing something darker, more sinister. "You were never supposed to forget, Molly," he murmured, chilling her to the core. Molly's instincts kicked in, icy tendrils wrapping around her heart. She had to protect her children, had to shield them from whatever storm was brewing outside. But as the air grew thick with tension and every creak of her old house echoed more ominously than before, she realized she had stepped into a web of secrets from which there might be no escape. As fear clawed at her throat, she turned to Jake, ready to confront him, but the night held its breath, and the darkness whispered promises of chaos yet to come. In that silence, the question lingered: would she unravel the truth, or would Crestwood's haunting legacy consume her whole? Molly's breath caught as Jake's words seeped into her like poison. Time felt suspended, every second stretching out, heavy with dread. The shadows seemed to hum, vibrating with dark energy. She glanced toward the window, half expecting to see something creeping closer, something lurking just beyond the glass. "Forget?" she echoed, trying to shake off the unease. "What are you talking about?" His smile shifted, warping into a grimace that made her stomach churn. "You don't even know, do you? They don't want you remembering." He trailed off, glancing towards the door again, a shiver run through his form. Panic clawed at her throat. "Who?" What don't I remember? She struggled to keep her voice steady, to mask the turmoil roiling inside. Her gaze darted around the room, searching for reassurance, but the objects around her, the family pictures, the cozy decorations, felt suddenly alien, pulsing with hidden menace. "They're coming," Jake said, his voice dropping to a whisper that barely skimmed past her ears. "And you opened the door." He paused, eyes flickering to the ominous patterns carved into the wood. "They want in." The chilling thought spiraled through her mind. Had she unleashed something? Images of old tales and hushed warnings washed over her, a childhood steeped in folklore that spoke of curses, dread, spirits trapped in the earthy darkness. The things her mother warned her about when she was young, tales that she thought she had long left behind. Molly. Jake's voice trembled as he reached towards her, but the moment was interrupted by that insistent knock again. It rang out like a death toll, echoing through the hall, and fear surged like fire in her veins. "Stay here," she commanded, disbelief rippling through her. Every instinct screamed to hide, to protect herself and her boys. She glanced at the kitchen where the sound of their quiet breaths drifted from the peaceful oblivion of sleep. "Don't open it again," he cried, grabbing her wrist with an iron grip. "You don't understand what they are." But his warning only fueled her resolve. Panic was damning, and she had to find out what was truly happening. She pulled free from his grasp, heart pounding as she approached the door once more, each step heavier than the last. Was it curiosity or sheer instinct driving her to face whatever horror awaited? Each knock grew louder, more insistent, as Molly's hand clasped the doorknob. Sweat trickled down her back, and with a deep breath that threatened to burst from her chest, she threw the door wide open. Outside, the porch light flickered violently, illuminating a sight that made her blood run cold. The once empty street was now lined with figures cloaked in shadow, their faces obscured, yet their intent spun in the air like a tempest. They were watching. "Leave her alone," Jake shouted, a panic flickering across his features as he rushed to her side. "Get back inside, now." But it was too late. The door creaked in place, caught between the worlds of safety and chaos. Molly's pulse raced, her body frozen in uncertainty as the figures began to whisper in unison, a low, haunting chant that seeped into her bones, testing the very fabric of her reality. The air temperature plummeted, as if death itself had wrapped its icy fingers around her. Shadows seemed to pulse and throb, encroaching like a flood ready to drown her. She felt their call, felt it tugging at her memories, urging her to remember, to see. "Molly, please." Jake's voice trembled, desperate, as the figures closed in. "You need to remember." 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind, fragments of laughter, of warmth, of games played long ago, spiraled back like a cruel mirage. What truth lay buried beneath her foggy memories? The figures advanced, shadows merging into a dark mass threatening to engulf everything. As fear clamped down on her soul, the candlelight flickered once, twice, and finally went out, plunging the world into darkness. And in that black void, Molly realized the truth was close, tantalizingly near, but the question remained: would she uncover it before it consumed her? The last echo of the chant faded into a deafening silence, leaving her breathless and trembling as shadows loomed behind her. What was left to remember? And more importantly, could there still be a way to hold on to what mattered most before the dark took it all away? Molly's heart thundered in her chest, a frantic reminder of her own life as the world around her dissolved into pitch black. The shadows seemed to breathe, closing in, clutching at her with unseen fingers. She couldn't tell if she was trembling from fear or from some deeper instinct, urging her to flee from the encroaching dark. "Molly?" Jake's voice was a thin thread of panic. "Can you see them?" She shook her head, the familiar feeling of his presence fuzzing at the edges. The memories clawed at her mind like desperate hands, pulling her towards something, someone. The flickering light from the porch had vanished, replaced by an unnatural cold that sunk deep into her bones. It felt like an invitation from the abyss, and she hesitated, a needle of dread stitching her feet to the floor. The chanting continued, an otherworldly hymn that vibrated in her skull. It twisted her thoughts, weaving in and out of the familiar and the unknown. Were they really out there? Or was this all a twisted nightmare born from her own unraveling sanity? "Molly, listen to me," Jake urged sharply. "You need to shut the door." She turned her gaze to him, those pleading eyes that once felt like home now reflecting his own fear back at her. The warmth they shared felt distant, eroded by this skeletal darkness that came creeping in. "But what if they have answers?" she whispered, the thought curdling her stomach. "What if they know?" Jake's expression twisted in anguish. "They don't want you to know. They thrive on your fear." You need to remember. Just then, something heavy brushed past her, a fleeting shadow lurking at the corner of her vision. Fear gripped her throat like a vice. The dark mass outside shifted with intent, melding together into a shape that was once human but now twisted into something monstrous. It loomed like a storm cloud, blotting out the last remnants of light. "Please, Molly." Jake's voice pierced through her haze, filled with the weight of everything they defaced together. "You're putting the boys in danger." She blinked, snapping out of the trance. The chant rose and fell like waves lapping at her sanity. Suddenly, there were more faces, larger figures moving in sync, their forms flickering. A chorus of whispers flowed toward her, bitter and laced with ages of pain. "Remember, remember." A flash of something familiar flickered in her mind, a moment stolen from the clutches of time. It glimmered, then faded, leaving behind a bitter taste of loss. I can't remember," she gasped, frustration building. The uncertainty gnawed at her insides as shadows twisted around her, urging her to give in to the darkness. "No. You must." Jake's hands gripped her shoulders, grounding her as reality threatened to slip. "It's the only way. You need to face what's been hidden." But before she could respond, one of the shadowy figures stepped forward, stepping into the dim remnants of the porch light. Its face became clearer, a hollow echo of someone she once loved, someone she thought had vanished forever. "Molly," it rasped, voice like gravel, "you owe us." Fear morphed into urgency, the realization clawing at her like the specters wrapping around her mental defenses. She was about to uncover something monumental, a secret forged in pain and time. But the very act of remembrance felt like a betrayal. As the figure extended a hand, the rest of the shadows surged closer, their whispers crescendoing into a cacophony of longing and regret that enveloped her. Memories danced just out of reach, and Molly knew she stood at the brink of revelation, but would the truth bend her will to the darkest desires? The shadows drawing nearer, she could almost taste the dread. This was just the beginning. The moment hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. Would she grasp at the shreds of her past? Or would it consume her entirely? A deafening silence fell, broken only by Jake's ragged breaths and the muffled pulse of her quickening heartbeat. What awaited her on this precipice of memory? And could remembering lead to their salvation or mark the beginning of even deeper horrors? The whispering shadows thickened, wrapping around Molly like a heavy fog. The ghostly figure, now fully illuminated, altered her perspective of reality. It was not merely a shadow but a remnant of what was once human, its hollow eyes filled with desperation and ancient sorrow. "Molly," it breathed, extending its skeletal hand further, its fingers twitching anxiously as if waiting for her touch. Something within her stirred, a desperate longing that fought against the rising tide of fear. "Stop!" Jake cried, recoiling as if he'd been slapped. "Don't touch it. It's not who you think it is." But it felt like a deep-rooted memory pulsing in her veins, a voice echoing from within the confines of a forgotten past. She leaned closer to the figure, drawn in by an unseen force boiling steadily just beneath her skin. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. The shadows around her seemed to listen, the chanting growing louder, more oppressive, gnawing at her sense of self. "It's not what we want, Molly. It's what you must uncover. What you must confront," the figure rasped, its voice merging with the haunting serenade. Other shadows hovered nearby, weaving closer, forming vague outlines of familiarity. Images of laughter and warmth danced just beyond her grasp, only to dissolve into despair. "No," Jake hissed, desperation creeping into his tone. "You don't know what you're doing. It's a trap." But even Jake's words felt distant, muffled by the wave of darkness that threatened to drown them both. Molly's resolve began to falter, flickering like a candle about to die in a draught. Suddenly, an intense, jagged pain pierced through her chest, a feeling like icy fingers gripping her heart. The memories flooded back, all the joy, the laughter, the shattered pieces of her past that crumbled before her. Faces intertwined in sorrow and joy twisted into a grotesque display of longing. The huge figure just outside the threshold morphed, splitting into fragmented images of family members she thought lost, their smiles now twisted, their eyes hollow. "No! No!" Molly shouted, collapsing against the doorframe as she braced herself, the pulsation of dread drowning her. She fell to her knees, the shadows closing in tight, squeezing out every ray of hope. The chanting now turned into a deafening roar, drowning her thoughts. "You owe us, Molly," the figure repeated, its tone almost pleading. "Each memory is a thread that binds you to us, you cannot escape." Molly pressed her palms together, eyes squeezing shut. "You're not real. You can't be." The words felt flimsy and weak against the onslaught of their demands, but then, within the chaos of shadows and despair, a faint glimmer sparked in her mind. A voice soft yet urgent cut through the din. "Remember who you are, Molly. Embrace the truth." It was Jake's, but different. A plea laced with determination, urging her to claw her way back to clarity. The sound of her heart drummed louder than the chanting, drowning out everything else. Molly opened her eyes, feeling the weight of the figure looming over her. She raised her head, heart racing, and in that moment, clarity washed over her. There was a choice, a thin thread that tethered her to either the truth or the abyss, but just as resolve formed, the darkness lunged forward, a wave of panic pushing her back. The shadows screamed with fury, howling their disappointment. "Join us!" they cried, a cacophony of voices blending together, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Molly!" Jake shouted, reaching for her. But the shadows between them thickened, a swirling center of chaos. With dread coiling in her gut, she realized she stood at the precipice of a decision. What would she choose? Would she embrace the haunting whispers of her past, or would she break free from this sinister grip? As the shadows shifted, one silent question lingered in the air, pulsating with urgency. Could Molly confront the horrifying truth of her origins before it consumed her whole? Molly fought against the tide of darkness, fear flooding her senses like a rushing river. The shadows tightened around her, their grip like icy chains, each whisper sinking deeper into her mind. "Remember," they urged, "remember us." She could barely breathe, the air thick with despair. Images swirled, flashing before her eyes, children playing in sunlit fields, laughter echoing, faces aglow with joy. But that joy twisted abruptly, morphing into dreadful memories, scenes of loss and grief clawing at her soul. They were all staring at her, eyes once filled with warmth now hollow voids. "Join us," they pleaded again, voices crisp like shattered glass. Molly clutched her head, trying to drown them out, but their insistence seeped under her skin, shaking the very foundation of her being. How could she resist the pull? These shadows wore the faces of her past, memories stitched together in a heartbreaking tapestry. "Stop!" she screamed, still grappling with herself, torn between the echoing shadows and Jake's desperate call. "What do you want from me?" A moment of silence fell. The whispering walls paused, watching her, waiting. It made her skin crawl. The skeletal figure stepped closer, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light, a lure masked in darkness. "I am all that is left, Molly," it said, voice soft yet throaty, dripping with sorrow. "You have the strength to heal this broken world. To join us in a truth that will set you free." A sick feeling gripped her. Was this truth? Or another deception, another web of lies spun to ensnare her? The shadow swayed, an unsettling rhythm that made her head spin, and she felt that pulse of longing again, wanting to believe them. No, she gasped, shaking her head violently. The air felt electric, charged with the weight of choices suspended around her. I can't. I want tea. In that moment, a new memory emerged, cleaving through the shadows. A kitchen filled with laughter, her mother baking cookies, sweet scents swirling like spells in the air. Keep fighting, Molly. That voice rang out once more, clear and resolute, fight for the life that's yours. The figure recoiled slightly, rage coursing through the thrumming shadows. It didn't like that flicker of resistance. You don't know what you are doing, it hissed, the fury echoing through the corridor. Molly took a deep breath. I will not join you, she declared, feeling the seed of strength grow inside her. I will not surrender. As if propelled by her declaration, the shadows convulsed violently, howling in dismay. She felt the energy shift, as though her very assertion ignited a spark of power within her. The oppressive presence began to waver. The darkness recoiled and began to pull away, releasing its grip just enough for her to move. Molly. Jake's voice reached out, desperate and cracking, slicing through the turmoil. You're almost there. Come back. Molly stumbled towards him, heart racing, adrenaline coursing through her veins like fire. The shadows lashed out one last time, shrieking in pure fury, and with a roar, they lunged at her. Just as she reached the last step towards Jake, the darkness enveloped her, a mass of twisted bodies and tormented spirits screaming her name. Molly. Jake's arms reached out, but the shadows surged forward, and she felt her resolve begin to crack under the pressure, and then everything went black. A rush of cold the moment she collided into the void. The air was thick and suffocating. Silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Was this the end of her choice? But somewhere inside the deafening silence, she heard it, the faintest heartbeat. A pulsing rhythm against the stillness. It wasn't the dark. It felt alive, a whisper of hope, calling her back. Could she awaken from this darkness? Could she defy the shadows that sought to drown her? The question lingered like smoke in her lungs as she fought to breathe. What was waiting for her on the other side of this silence? Molly floated in the void, suspended in an abyss of silence. The heartbeat pulsed louder now, each beat a reminder of life, of defiance against the darkness. She reached out, fingers stretching for something, anything that felt real. For a moment, there was just that nothingness pressing in from all sides. It was terrifying but strangely comforting. Then, without warning, the silence fractured. A sharp crack echoed, a muffled sound that felt waking. Molly's heart raced. It was growing, an urgent rhythm punctuating the stillness, pushing the shadows back. Stay with me, a quiet voice whispered through the cacophony of darkness, barely audible. It was familiar. A hint of warmth in the cold grip of despair. It wrapped around her like a lifeline. Jake? She called, her voice cracking in the gloom. She didn't know if he could hear her. The last memory of his hand reaching for hers felt so distant now. The echo of an answer pulsed through her. I'm here. It was stronger, more defined this time. Keep fighting, Molly. Focus on my voice. Fighting against a tide she could not see, Molly concentrated on the sound, grounding herself in his presence even as the shadows clawed at her. Their whispers grew louder again, morphing into a discordant chorus, anger lacing their words. Join us. You belong in the dark. They howled, a cacophony of rage and sorrow. No. I belong with the living. Molly shouted into the void, her heart racing. The very fabric of the darkness trembled, almost as if it were listening. With an unexpected surge of energy, she pulled herself deeper into the sound of Jake's voice. Don't let go of me, please. The heartbeat began to resonate in sync with her resolve, pushing the blackness away. Suddenly, blinding light pierced the edges of her vision. A shape emerged, shadowy but familiar. Hold on. Jake cried out. I can reach for you. Molly felt warmth envelop her, a cocoon built on pure will. The shadows screeched, furious at her refusal to surrender, their shrill voices clawing at her mind and heart. Fight, Molly. Fight. Jake's voice rang out again, more urgent, more desperate. Just as her heart threatened to give in, the light expanded, wrapping around her tightly. She focused on Jake, on that flicker of hope, and thrust herself toward the brightness. The darkness recoiled, hissing as her light advanced. Together. She called, feeling that charge of energy growing in her chest. Together, Jake. We can break this. The shadows convulsed, an unearthly wail rising up from the depths, shaking the ground beneath her. The light intensified, bright enough to blind the writhing forms. Then, in one shattering moment, she was yanked into the flood of light, like being released from a vice. The world clarified, and she found herself standing beneath a night sky, the air fresh and cool on her skin. Molly. Are you okay? Jake's face swam into view, concern and relief mingled in his eyes. The shadows remained at the edge, retreating, their whispers still haunting but much quieter now. I think so, she stammered, feeling the weight of the dark still lingering in the back of her mind. But what about the others? Are they no? You don't understand. He interrupted, a frantic edge to his voice. It's still not over. You don't remember the shadows they're looking for you. What? Panic surged through her, weaving between the remnants of her courage. What do you mean? His gaze shifted, as if drawn to something lurking behind her. They want to reclaim you. We need to leave now. Before she could react, the shadows crept back, feeding on her fear, pulling at her very essence. The air seemed to thicken, dark shapes forming at the corners of her vision. They churned together, a dark reminder that the battle wasn't over. Run! Jake shouted. But where could they run to? Molly hesitated, feeling the darkness shift closer, coiling around her legs. Shadows whispered her name, promising secrets and truth. Don't ignore us, Molly. They hissed, echoing her deepest fears. What do they want from me? The question hung in the air, raw and desperate. Jake grasped her arm, urgency flashing in his eyes. Your choice. Remember, it's your choice. As the shadows pressed closer, their grasp tightening, Molly's mind raced. Every choice loomed like a specter, heavy and suffocating. What was she willing to sacrifice? With the darkness closing in around them and nowhere to run, she felt the heartbeat again, fierce against the fear, echoing in her soul. It was a moment that would change everything. If she chose wrong, would she lose herself forever? Molly's breath hitched as the shadows lunged forward, a single mass brewing with hunger and despair. She felt their icy fingers creeping higher, suffocating her resolve. Panic surged through her veins, the dark was alive, and it wanted her. Jake! Her voice broke the silence like a twig snapping underfoot. What do I do? What do I choose? Whatever is pure. He shouted back, his eyes wide with urgency. Your heart knows. Just trust it. Heart. It sounded so simple, yet as the shadows licked her skin, esoteric apprehensions clawed at the primal instinct to flee. The whispering grew louder, thrumming through her like an insistent echo. You are one of us, embrace us, no. She screamed, shaking her head. I'm not like you. The shadows shrieked in response. With every defiance, they pulsed like a living thing, retreating only to advance once more, tightening their hold around her limbs. She felt a douse of anguish seep into her, the weight of every bad decision, every secret she had ever hid. Remember the light, Molly. Jake called, his voice a beacon. The fear surged in her, demanding recognition of her every flaw, dragging her down through an abyss of doubt. No, she murmured. This doesn't end here. Summoning every remnant of strength, she began to push against the shadows. Images of laughter with friends, the warmth of summer days, and stolen kisses flashed through her mind. Those were the memories worth fighting for. The heartbeat surged stronger, bolder. Molly closed her eyes and pictured the light that once engulfed her. She could almost feel its warmth returning, flickers of hope igniting in her heart. Together. She shouted once more, tears streaming down her cheeks. The angry shouts of the shadows faltered for the briefest moment. Together. Jake echoed, eyes blazing. And in that moment, they clung to each other. It didn't matter how insurmountable the darkness felt. They were not alone in this, they had each other. With a pulse of shared resolve, Molly could feel the shadows shake and convulse, their whispers turn to frenzied wails. You can't escape us. You are ours. Anger rose in her, the wrongness rippled through her like thunder. No. I choose life. I choose love. A brilliant light flared from where they stood, it burst forth like a flare in the night sky. The shadows writhed, yelping as their darkness shrank back from the brilliance, their forms twisting in panic. Molly! Jake cried, his voice filled with determination. Keep going. Hold on tight. Together, they thrust their hands forward, channeling every fiber of their fears into a beacon against the dark. The light pulsed, a mesmerizing explosion of radiance that engulfed the shadows, tearing at their whispered promises, unraveling the tendrils of despair. But just as victory seemed within reach, a chilling laugh breached the air, a sound that pierced through the thundering heartbeat of the light. It echoed around them, chilling Molly to the bone. Fools, you cannot banish what you will not understand. The ground trembled beneath them, and a figure began to emerge from the darkness, cloaked in shadows, eyes glowing with malicious intent. Enough! Jake yelled, pushing against the encroaching darkness. You're nothing without her. But the figure fixed its gaze on Molly, a twisted smile stretching across its face. Don't you see, dear child? Your heart is a beacon, but it also sings of the choices you hide. Secrets unspeakable. You cannot escape, you belong to us now. Molly's stomach knotted. This was not just a fight for survival, her very soul was at stake. What sacrifices awaited her? How deep did the shadows reach into her heart? With one final scream, she fought against the encroaching shadows, but the darkness thickened, smothering everything in its path. Uncertainty crept in, clawing at her mind. Would the light hold? Would they escape? As uncertainty wrapped around them, the figure leaned closer, whispering sweet promises of power and release. Would accepting them mean safety or demise? Could she stand strong against the very essence of her fears? The night continued to envelop. Everything, every heartbeat hanging in the balance. What would she sacrifice to finally break free? The shadows whispered promises, coaxing her closer to surrender. Molly felt her resolve wavering, and fear ran ice-cold through her veins. Don't listen! Jake screamed, his voice cracking. He stumbled, pushing against the dark, the light flickering as if responding to his panic. Molly, stay with me. We're almost there. The figure loomed larger, bathed in darkness, an onyx silhouette against the light's radiance. A song of sorrow filled the air, notes heavy with despair that weighed down on her heart. The darkness pulsed like breath, pressing inward, consuming every shred of hope. Your love binds you, yet it can also chain you, the figure crooned, its voice silky smooth. Imagine all you could possess if you join us. Visions bloomed in her mind, power, freedom, everything she felt had been denied. She could seize control, reshape her fate. But then she remembered. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Love is not a chain. It's a lifeline. Lifeline or noose? It countered, and the laughter echoed again, cruel and taunting, reverberating through her skull. Molly's heart raced. She couldn't let the shadows win. Her gaze flicked to Jake, clinging to that beacon of hope. The memory of their laughter, their dreams, surged forward. Wasn't he that worth more than any promise of power? Fight! Jake urged, eyes wide, sweat beading on his forehead. Together, they summoned the strength thrumming within. She felt the light between them expand, flickering in defiance. No! The figure shrieked, its form shifting uneasily. You cannot deny the truth within. You wish to fight me, but you cannot escape your essence. Jake, hold my hand. She cried, and they linked fingers tightly, pouring their hearts into the light. The shadows recoiled, screeching in agony, but Molly felt something shift beneath her. The ground shook violently, splintering as tendrils of darkness erupted toward them. They threatened to wrap around their ankles, dragging them toward the abyss. They want you to let go, Molly. Just let go. No! She screamed, feeling the pull against her resolve. The darkness surged, demanding surrender. But Jake's grip tightened, anchoring her as she fought against the tide. I choose my own path. She shouted, the light bursting forth anew, brilliant and raw. It sliced through the shadows, illuminating once hidden cracks in the darkness. Make a choice, then. The cloaked figure roared, its visage warping with fury. Would you rather stay in the light and watch your friend perish? A crack formed beneath Jake's feet, the earth trembling ominously. His eyes widened in fear as the darkness curved maliciously towards him. Molly! He gasped, the terror palpable in his voice. No! She wailed, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. I want to let you go. Yet the darkness seemed to hesitate. Just for a breath, it flickered as if weighing the cost of its torment. You could have it all, just take his place. Molly's heart clenched. Every fiber of her being screamed to deny those words. But a flicker of doubt wormed its way into her mind. Was she strong enough to save them both? With panic and desperation clawing at her throat, she fought to summon the light. Could she defy the darkness without sacrificing Jake? The shadows swirled, hungry for her answer. Choose wisely, child, the figure hissed, glee coating its voice. And then, in that flash of near despair, she made her decision. Jake, stay with me. I want to lose you. But as she extended her hand towards him, the shadows thickened, smothering his cry, inches from her grasp. What could she save? What would she pay? As the ground below her crumbled, Molly felt the reality of the shadows slip around them both. Would her choice be for love or despair? Desperation filled the air thick and heavy. Would she risk everything for victory? Time stood still and darkened as the abyss gaped wide beneath her, an unyielding choice hung in the air. What was the price of freedom? And before she could fully contemplate her next move, the shadows lunged ready to claim her for their own. The darkness lunged, tendrils reaching out like grasping claws, eager to seize her. Fear twisted inside Molly, knotting her stomach until she felt sick. She couldn't lose Jake. Not like this. As the shadows coiled tighter, she could hear the whispering grow louder, hungry and mocking. Join us, Molly. All the power you've longed for, just take his place. Molly's mind raced. What good was power if it meant sacrificing the one person who mattered most? The shadows twisted around her legs, cold and suffocating. But she felt the warmth of Jake's grip, anchoring her. I want to let go. She shouted, a plea that echoed into the void. Then you'll both perish. The figure's laughter reverberated, unnerving and threatening. It surged forward, the darkness thickening like a storm cloud, consuming every ounce of brightness around them. Molly could feel Jake's fear bleed into her, a palpable current that flickered like the dying light around them. She fought against the encroaching gloom. You're not real. You're just a trick. Am I? The figure replied, its voice dripping like venom. What if I show you his truth? With a flick of its wrist, the shadow unveiled images, flashes of memories twisted and dark. Jake, standing tall beside her, a flicker of their past happiness, but then morphing into moments filled with betrayal. The time he hesitated, the secrets whispered in the dark. Molly gasped, her heart racing. No. That's not who he is. Perhaps not, the figure taunted. But it's whom you fear he might become. The vision struck her, and she found herself grappling with doubt. What if she was blind to a truth lurking in the shadows? But one look at Jake, his terrified eyes, the way he fought against the pull of darkness, grounded her. She knew him, trusted him, loved him. Fight it, she urged, her voice trembling but steady. We can break this together. Jake looked at her, desperation and determination warring on his face. Molly, he choked out, his voice strained against the crushing darkness. I believe in you. His words sparked a flicker of courage. Drawing a trembling breath, Molly focused on the light within her, summoning every ounce of love and hope as she stepped forward. You're not taking him from me. Bright light erupted from her, surging through the cracks that the shadows had created. The darkness shrieked, pulling back as if burned. The ground beneath them shook violently, the abyss yawning deeper, threatening to swallow everything whole. No. It was almost a cry of fear. The figure inched away, unnerved. You can't fight. I can and I will. Molly shouted back, throwing her arms wide, channeling every fear, every ounce of love into her voice. We refuse to bow to you. And just when it felt like the tide was turning, the ground beneath them buckled, and the shadows retaliated, clawing back. The light flickered, wavering dangerously. Could the warmth hold strong against overwhelming darkness? Could love really dispel this nightmare? In a final clutch of desperation, Molly turned to Jake. Stay with me. No matter what, stay with me. Tendrils lashed out, tearing toward her, hungry for despair and division. Up ahead, she glimpsed a shimmer of light, an escape, a promise. But it was so far away. As she glanced back at Jake, panic surged through her. He was slipping. One step into the maw of shadows, and he would be lost. Molly! He cried, his voice breaking, agonizing. A choice. Her heart splintered under the strain. Would their bond shatter with the darkness? With a final surge of all she had, she leaped toward him, arms outstretched. The shadows recoiled, but could the light hold strong enough? Suddenly, the world around them twisted, light and dark colliding. Molly felt herself pulled in every direction, the ground crumbling beneath her feet. What will you sacrifice? The figure hissed. Make your choice. And just like that, the connection frayed. A scream, a moment frozen in time, and then silence, deep, heavy silence. And as reality blurred, could she hold on to love when darkness threatened to pull them apart? The answer was obscured as the shadows thickened, leaving only uncertainty, and once more, a haunting echo floated in the air. What is the price of love? Molly's heart raced as she stood on the edge of oblivion, shadows swirling like deadly waves around her. They beckoned, threatening to drag her down into their depths. Panic clawed at her throat, but Jake's presence anchored her, his eyes flickering with certainty even as the darkness twisted around them. Together, Molly breathed, locking eyes with him. The shadows writhed, shrieking in fury at their refusal to surrender. We are stronger than this. With resolve ignited, she reached for the light within. It pulsed in her chest, swelling like a sunny flare, igniting the dimmest corners of her spirit. She could almost hear the echoes of laughter from her past, the songs of joy that filled her life before all of this began. I want to let the shadows claim us, she shouted, defiance ringing in her voice. Jake's grip tightened around her hand, and together they formed a barrier against the encroaching darkness. The figure emerging from the blackness loomed larger, swirling shadows around it like a cloak, its voice a low hiss. You cannot escape what lies within. Your fears will consume you. But fear was a prison she refused to inhabit any longer. With every surge of determination, she envisioned the light wrapping around her and Jake, blending their hearts, their memories into a shield against the darkness. I choose to embrace my truth," she cried, voice rising above the cacophony of despair. The shadows recoiled, screeching in agony. Light burst from their entwined hands, surging forth like a tidal wave, blinding and brilliant. The air vibrated with energy, the warmth pushing back the cold of the abyss. The darkness flinched, writhing as the shadows around it turned to mist, revealing inner truths stamped with her childhood memories, faces once cherished, spirits long forgotten. "Remember us." The whispers howled from the darkness, urging Molly to cave in, to succumb to the fear. But she stood firm. "You have no power here. You're just echoes of what I've endured." And with those powerful words, not only did she reject the shadows, she began to reclaim all that was stolen, the brightness of her boy's laughter, the scent of summer grass, the warmth of her mother's embrace. Each memory cemented her resolve, fortified her spirit against the tempest. The figure's gaze flickered, revealing an unsettling vulnerability masked by malice. "You cannot forget us, Molly, you owe us," it screeched, twisting in a desperate attempt to regain power. "What I owe are the memories of love and joy," she retorted. "You are merely a reminder of what I will not become." In that moment, the shadows hesitated. That flicker of uncertainty sparked hope deep within her. She could feel it, the fragile threads of joy intertwining with courage, binding tighter against the shadows. Her heart pounded against her ribs, melding desires with purpose. "I refuse," she asserted. "I will not hide from the truth." With one last push, they surged forward, hand in hand. The light exploded around them, enveloping the shadows entirely, collapsing the distance between truth and chaos. Everything brightened, their world pulsed with radiant clarity, illuminating the dark creatures that had tormented her for far too long. And suddenly, silence. As the light shimmered out, casting away the last remnants of despair, she found herself standing on solid ground, Jake's hand firmly in hers. They had won. The shadows lay defeated, evaporating like mist. "Molly?" he breathed, amazement and disbelief woven together. "I'm here," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, the weight of their battle pressing on her heart. "We did it. We're free." But even then, a flicker of worry hung in the air. What would they do now? As uncertainty began to creep back, Molly realized her heart was still heavy with the further conflicts nestled deep beneath the surface of their victory. "Jake," she began, fear lacing her words. "What if they come back? What if they find us again?" He stepped closer, the warmth of his figure almost grounding. "They might try, but we faced them together. We won to let them reach the light in us. Again. We're stronger now." She felt the truth settle within her, a new hope blooming. "I won to forget," she promised, her heart swelling with renewed courage. "I'll remember everything, the love, the laughter, the battles. This is just the beginning for us." Together, they turned to walk back into the living room, where shadows once thrived. Now light filtered through the windows, spreading warmth and possibility. The boys were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the horrors that had nearly consumed their family. Molly knew they were safe for now. In the corners of her heart, she held the promise of the power they'd uncovered. Shadows may linger, but they would no longer hold dominion over her life. Her memories would be her strength. As she settled down next to Jake, she took his hand, knowing that together they could face whatever darkness life threw their way. The shadows had retreated, but she also knew that every day forward would be a choice. That in those quiet moments, whispers of potential filled the air, new memories waiting to be made, a brighter future ahead. The essence of their journey was sealed with love, and as long as their hearts beat in unison, they stood strong against the darkness. They were ready to embrace everything that awaited them on the other side. Now, for you, dear reader, don't let this adventure end here. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm that brings you more spine-chilling content. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic ending. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this riveting conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel. Let us keep exploring these thrilling tales together.